Hey, good morning, everyone. Please add any items you have to the agenda. Ooh, somebody changed to the new editing experience.
Whoops.
I never had the nerve to do that.
Oh, sorry. I
That's
thought
all
it
right.
was
It probably needed to be done. I just never had the nerve to do it.
no, sorry. I thought it's just gonna affect myself. I didn't know
Yeah,
that it's
no,
gonna
that's
affect
it.
everybody.
It's fine. It looks, I was afraid that something unexpected would happen, but it seems to all be just fine. Good, good. Well, let's see. We have a pretty good attendance today. We don't have a lot on the agenda. Um, actually, that causes me to think of the following. We have reached a state where things are reasonably stable, which had not always been the case. And we didn't have a lot on the agenda. We didn't actually have very many people show up last week and not very little on the agenda. We don't have a lot on the agenda today. So let me just ask the question, should we meet every other week? Just put that out there. Any thoughts?
I think it makes sense. We didn't have much on, we usually don't have much on the agenda and don't fill the whole hour, so it could make sense to move it bi-weekly.
Yeah, it hadn't been the case, but it certainly in the last, I'm just trying to go back in time here a little bit. Even when we did have phone meetings, they were closer to half an hour recently.
Well, it seems like our biggest struggles were around infrastructure components. And so how are you feeling about all of that?
Well, I'm feeling, actually, that's one of the reasons that I'm kind of thinking this, that that aspect has stabilized significantly.
Yeah, well, we were doing, bi-weekly, and we can always ramp it back up again. None of this is written in stone. So
Sure.
I think it makes a ton of sense to dynamically adjust based on the needs of the project.
Well, anyone else want to weigh in?
Sounds good.
All right, so let's do this. Let's change. I'll just record it here to every other week. And so our next meeting is the 15th. And I will change this. And again, we can always change it back. All right. And please do make heavy use of Slack and email for anything that comes up. Okay, so now turning to infrastructure. So Eric, thank you on the 2204 and the 2404 images. I believe everything is good. There is an issue on the AMP-related integration jobs failing, but as near as I can tell, that's not due to the new AWS images. And if it turns out that that is the case, I'll let you know. But I think we're good there, and I'll close the we'll close the ticket.
I think I went ahead and closed it out yesterday, so.
Okay, thanks. I saw something, maybe you were waiting for me, but maybe you closed it and said I could reopen it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what it was.
Yeah, okay, thanks. All right, that brings us to the GitHub actions. Anything to report there?
Not really right now. A lot of my time has been sucked up by Volta issue with their documentation build. Um, so yeah, outside of the images, I haven't been able to get any time into that in the last couple weeks.
Okay. The third,
Larry, one
go
thing
ahead.
regarding the GitHub Actions is for the SD core, with the help of the canonical team, we had migrated basically everything into these reusable workflows, basically. So we are now, sorry, this is not the correct link. We are now, yeah, everything using everything from these reusable workflows centralized on the that GitHub repository.
So this is no longer an issue.
For the SD core, it's not. So again, thanks for the to the canonical team help. So we have that kind of like addressed. So I don't know if there is any other task, because I understand that Eric started with the SD run, sorry, with the ONOS project. So we work on our own for the SD core.
All right, so that's where the request came from.
They came from the SD core, right? But there was no work done, so that's why. Yeah.
So reusing workflows on SD core on. All right.
Yeah. Maybe you can move the bullet that I put under the SD core. Probably it will be better in the GitHub Actions on infrastructure side. The third bullet in the SD core, that's what I mentioned about the GitHub Actions.
Well, I was sort of, yeah, okay. It's dual recorded because it was a generic thing that we're doing infrastructure wide, but it's now that it's I'll just note see below. Okay. So I would imagine that then, while Eric may have been going down a slightly different path, that could just be reused for SD-RAN. What you've done or mimicked anyway.
Uh,
I could say that.
Several
Oh,
of those GitHub Actions may be used. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so several of those GitHub Actions can be actually reused on the SD core in the ONOS project itself. If not all, basically. So, yeah, most of them, if not all.
So Eric, I'll leave it to you on making the changes to the ONOS project, whether it makes sense to continue down the path you've been going, or just to take a look at what they did in SD core and mimic that.
yeah, and I think they did take one of my suggestions to sort of take something out and use a separate action. And the overall method was not the way I was going, but it is also like a sensible way to do it. Basically, each step was broken into its own workflow, whereas I was the way mine are set up is, a single workflow that would perform a task in its entirety rather than having just each little bit be reusable. And then some things are broken down further into their own actions if they're a specific task that is used a lot. But yeah, I think it would probably make sense for Rock and other Ono stuff to generally just reference those in any further changes or edits that need to be made can just be made there.
I
But
didn't
you,
quite
you have to
follow
replicate it though in the other org, right?
exactly. That's my
No,
understanding.
we can just call those actions from OMEC project.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the workflows are public, so
Yeah, but based on what I was reading from GitHub, I understood that it was at the organization level that they have access, given that they kind of share these secrets and things like that. So that's what I wasn't sure whether you can actually call it from a different organization. But anyway, so
yeah,
if you
you
can call it,
just
that's fine.
yes. So like Onos wouldn't have access to the OMEC project secrets, but as long as um they have correctly named secrets in that organization, using those workflows would still work fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the LF has a library of reusable workflows that we keep in our LFIT organization that we use across, many different projects, various organizations. Um, and yet we just have a set of sort of standard secrets and variables that have to be there in order to use certain workflows. But other than that, it works fine to call them from a different org.
Now, how likely is that something gets broken in another organization? Let's, in this specific case, let's say the Onos project organization, if we make any updates into these GitHub actions that are part, like looking into the SD core itself, or how we're going to proceed when there is such cases that because of an update on the GitHub action on the OMEC project organization, something gets broken on the Onos project organization.
Yeah. So that's kind of the big question mark, and that's the difficulty I've run into because the ones I was making, I was bringing in workflows from both Onos and OMEC to sort of make something that is both generic but performs every task so that anybody who wants to do a Helm release, it'll work even when there's like 3 different versions of Helm releases going on at least. Um, so yeah, really, if you want something super specific and it's going to break something somewhere else, we could just make a different version of that in Onos project. So there's no reason um, that if there's going to be things that are similar but have important differences, we could still create a different version in the other org. But
Yeah,
then we don't need to recreate things that are fairly generic. We could just call them from one place.
right. Yeah, no, I'm asking you specifically because if you see the second bullet that I put in the SD core, so what happened is that the Golang CI lint basically released version.2.
Hmm.
And the action itself moved from 5.6 or 6 point something to 7. So version 7 from the GitHub action perspective uses Golang CI lint version 2. And this basically completely breaks compared to the previous Golang CI lint. So what we have to do is to be able to use the newer GitHub action. So we have to move all the Golang CI lint YAML files to version 2, right? So, but in this specific case, again, if you are reusing an action, in this case, Golang CI lint, it means that you need to modify or to update all the repositories that use the Golang CI lint to version 2. So those kind of changes that I'm kind of like referring that may break things because of moving to a newer version or something like that.
So it sounds to me like that's something where the Golang lint version should be parameterized on the action so that
Not really. Well, it might be, but as far as I understand, if you the Golang is, I mean, if you are using Dependabot to also update your GitHub actions, uh, there is not necessarily a version to choose in there because version Golang CI lint action, which is basically the GitHub action, version 7 only works with version 2 of Golang CI lint. So, but anyway, so my question about this kind of like making changes in one place and breaking another place is because of these kind of situations. So that's, I just wanted to highlight that part.
Yeah, I think generally with something like that, if you're, so the issue is that going from one version to the next is going to break some jobs, then you make that a parameter that can be passed in. Usually you make the default the old version, and then the ones that are getting updated could also just send in the parameter to say, hey, switch this to the latest version. You know, all of our files have been updated, so we're ready to go. It's not going to break it for us. And then,
But probably I'm not gonna explain myself correctly. So if you look into the GitHub action itself, so we have a GitHub action for Golang CI lint action, which is basically the one that wraps the Golang CI lint.
mhm.
The action itself is version 7.00, right? So, and we have dependable to also update the version of the GitHub actions. So version 7.0 of the GitHub action works only with the Golang CI lint version 2, right? So there is not like, from the action itself, there is not much a way of parameterize the Golang CI lint version
Okay, Gabriel,
because the action itself only supports version 2.
Gabriel,
Yeah.
I think we're talking past each other. It's always possible to wrap something with a level of indirection and parameterize that, which I suspect is where you would end up in this particular case.
Well, that's fine. Just gonna again, I'm just trying to highlight this.
Yeah. So, but I'm actually sympathetic to to keeping these not too tightly coupled. I mean, it puts a burden on the OMEC to do it in a general way that everybody else can use, and then it's just an extra. Either you have to replicate the work and have 2 copies of it and keep each copy up to date according to the project, or someone's going to take on the burden of keeping it generic enough to work for all cases. And my inclination on this one, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the TST, is that we just go ahead and copy it and not try to reuse across orgs. Which sounds like your argument, Gabriel. I don't know what other, I'd like to hear what other.
No, I don't have any specific position on that. I was just trying to highlight that maybe these kind of like breaking issues, and the SD core can evolve by itself, but changes itself may break some other places from the GitHub action perspective, and then somebody needs to actually take care of addressing those changes. That's my only point. Yeah, if you want to reuse, that's fine. Just reuse it from this same repository. That's okay. But what I'm highlighting, if there is any kind of like something gets broken on another organization, it needs to be kind of addressed by somebody, right?
Eric, what are you hearing here?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that we wouldn't want to have, yeah, like it is a burden to try to make everything in one place super generic. The flip side is that any changes or updates that need to be made will often need to be made in 2 places. My instinct would be to use the things that are already pretty generic from a single source, and anything that's getting a little more specific or will work differently depending on which project it is, that those should be broken out in 2 places. Because a lot of stuff is pretty straightforward.
So if we left it like this, it's on your to-do list to build these reusable workflows for Ono's project.
Mm-hmm.
You can do some combination of org specific and you reusing what's already in OMAC. But if you did that in a way that didn't require any additional work or extremely minimal work from the OMAC project, is that a workable plan?
Yeah,
So that we would capture the, you know, the base level reuse, but not maybe some of them, not required for everything.
yeah, I mean, so I have been looking at this as if they are two orgs that are essentially part of the same umbrella. So if it is an issue to not have Onos project work affect OMEC project work, then yeah, absolutely, we could just copy the whole thing over.
Yeah, we're in this
Just
gray area between both of those being true,
right.
or at least we're worried about one of them being more true than the other.
Yeah, I think probably a full copy would work fine. Um, and I could watch the projects and just make sure that if there are important changes or updates, they happen in both places. And, you know, there will be things like dependabot updates to dependencies that'll happen in both places. But that's
Yeah,
probably a pretty minor annoyance all told versus, you know, something in one place starts to break everybody else's jobs. That could I can see that being a big enough issue that it would be worth the extra legwork for dependencies and such, small updates,
yeah.
to just have them in two places instead.
I think that's probably the right thing to do here. Does anyone else want to amend that plan? Okay, let's wait to hear from Eric next time as to how it's going and go with that for now. I added a third bullet here, which maybe is a non-issue, just because Gabriel had raised it in a chat on the side about our Docker Hub registry. The Aether registry actually is a proxy of Docker Hub. It's possible that has bitten us in terms of having an out-of-date image. And I can point down to OnRamp. There was a point at which there was a recent patch and I ran it and it succeeded, but it has never succeeded since. And so I was a little suspicious that the proxy had not fetched the latest image. I don't know that we can resolve this now, but maybe just having a note about that. Can you remind me, are we generating images to both Docker Hub and the Aether registry, or are we fully dependent upon the proxy for the Aether registry?
So the Ether registry outside of the proxy is also replicating what's on Docker Hub for um, for all of our groups in Docker Hub. So Atomics, OMIC project, Onos project, SD core, all the images in those Docker Hub orgs are also being fully replicated to the Ether project registry. So the proxy, the best use case for the proxy is really things that are um, outside of our own orgs.
Okay, and actually that's extremely minimal. So best use case for proxy is non-Ether images.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anything else you should be able to get directly from, like if you just replace docker.io with registry.etherproject.org, um, from
Okay,
there
so
the image addresses should be the exact same.
So I think that means we edit the, I think this is in the on-ramp, bars files to not use the proxy.
It is in the on the override files basically. So
Oh,
for
it's
the
in
case,
it's in the overwrite files.
well,
Okay.
it's a mix. So for example, G.B theme, you have it in the vars file, but SD core images, they are into the SD core 5G values, basically in the override values.
Okay.
And also the SRS run images that we kind of created, those are also in the vars file. Now, Eric, one quick question. You said that all of our organizations are basically getting like mirrored into the Ether registry. I guess that also includes the Ether project, Docker, which is in Docker Hub, we have one kind of organization called Ether project. I guess that's also being mirrored into the Ether registry.
No, I don't see that org on here.
Yeah, we have, let me see. So we have a few, at least I see that I am an admin in a few organizations, Omid project, and I see also this Ether project. Let's see. So I see Onos project, Omid project, Ether project, and there is another one that's Open Ether, but I don't think, yeah, there is nothing in that one of the Open Ether organization. Yeah, but we push a couple images that we create for SRS Run into the Ether project. That's the only thing that there is in the Ether project organization. Then as the core images we push into the OMEC project. Would it be this a good time to kind of switch organizations to push the images?
You certainly could, or I could add Ether project to the replications for our registry.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, there are two different things. So one is basically, in your case, to add this the Ether project to kind of mirror what is in Docker Hub, but more from the SD core perspective of the development team of the TST to see whether instead of publishing the images on the OMEC project organization in Docker, start using the Ether project organization in Docker. That was a kind of different question. Sorry.
Oh, so yeah, we had discussed that. I do think that I think the best way to do it is still to publish to Docker Hub so that they're out there on that public registry.
No, Eric. In Docker, we have two organizations, OMEC project and Ether project.
Uh-huh.
So my question is, as of now, we are publishing the images in the OMEC project. My question for the SD core is whether we want to start publishing the images in the Ether project instead of the OMEC project. Talking about just Docker Hub.
Oh yeah. I mean I have no real opinion on that.
Yeah,
That's
no. The question wasn't for you that specific question. So the question for you was
okay.
the Ether project, whether it was getting mirrored or not. My question for the TST is whether this will be a good time since we already migrated all the GitHub actions to a kind of reusable workflows. Whether it will be a good time to kind of start publishing the images in Docker Hub Ether project instead of Docker Hub Omid project.
Yeah, I think so. Others? I think it's the OMEC project committers taking on your initiative to do that. I don't think that's a problem. I think it's probably a good thing.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the core.
Yeah, so from the core
Yeah, go ahead.
perspective, We moved the code base to use Go 124. This is because Dependable start opening some PRs related to Golang dependencies. And these Golang dependencies basically require Go 124. So we basically moved yesterday the whole code base to Go 124. The second bullet is again related to the Golang CI linked action. The version 7.0 requires Golang CI linked version 2, so we also migrated all the Golang CI YAML files to version 2. What we discussed earlier in the infrastructure side, that all GitHub actions got moved into the a central repository, let's say. And all repositories, all Omeg project repositories are now using the GitHub actions from the these reusable workflow flows from the central repository. The other part is along kind of making these changes. There is to protect the branches. There is like the classical way, which is basically just branch protection. And then there is the new way using the rule set. That is kind of what is recommended by GitHub. So we basically enable this rule set in all Omeg repositories to start kind of like checking, all the different things that we were doing in the brand protection, but now we're doing in the rule set, which is kind of like seems simpler and friendlier way to do all this stuff. So that also got updated yesterday. And the last bullet, I guess that should be from Gislan.
Yes, so it's just a heads up that we are currently in our planning phase for next cycle that will start in May. So we have a 6-month cycle in Canonical, and one thing that we plan to work on is a re-architecture proposal for config 5G and how Web Console sends the configuration to the different network functions. It's currently a bit complex. It's there's some bugs in how it works. There's a couple of places where we had to fix different issues regarding CPU usage and things like that. So our plan right now is to work on a proposal for a new architecture that we'll present to the TST when it's ready, but we'll not start until May working on that. It's just a heads up that we plan on working on that and proposing the changes before working on the changes themselves. We'll propose an architecture to the TST so we can discuss that before going forward. So that's the plan that we have right now.
That's great. I'm looking forward to the hearing the proposal. Anyone else have something else in the core or that bullet in particular? Okay, SD-RAN.
So I added a bullet there. So we're currently working on a project that we need to use a rig with SRS run. So our project is basically primarily concentrated on using SRS run itself. As part of the contract that we have, there was the idea to also deploy the rig along with the SRS run. But we are having issues with the SD-RAN itself. It requires E2 connection update, and that is kind of like a message that is not being sent by the SRS RAN. I brought this topic for a few weeks ago into the TST. So I also kind of communicate with Gujon about this. He helped me with a new image that is supposed to fix that issue last week, but it didn't work. So he's working on another image that hopefully makes it work. So in this case, we were told that either we use SD-RAN, or we use another rig. So of course we would like to use SD-RAN. So they ask us, we know the SRS run works with OSC rig, Flex rig, and Keysight rig simulator. So yeah, so this is something that I just wanted to bring, the topic here, that if we are not able to kind of use the SDRAM, we're gonna be forced to start using a different rig. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up. Hopefully Wujong can get you what you need.
Mhm.
Anything else on SD-RAN? I'm assuming there's,
No, that's kind of the only thing that just waiting on Wujon to see if there is any update.
yeah, it's not on. All right, on-ramp, we have now a 22 and 24 versions of Ubuntu images on AWS that we're running Jenkins integration tests on. I'm no longer running, unless I hear objection. They're still there, but I'm no longer running the 2004 tests. Everything seems to be going fine, except any of the tests that bring up amps coming up cleanly. But GNB sim is running and finding it and failing because there's something's amiss in getting the
registration failures.
yeah, the registration fails. So anyone that wants to take a look, there's an example of a failed job. And again, I don't know for sure what to make of this. Like I said, the very first, if you look at the last successful test, I think it was on March 26th, it was the day after all the last changes got committed. So I do not understand why it passed once, but it has not passed since. It's also not due to the new AWS images because I can't get it to run on my own box either.
So, Larry, like I can take a look. Is this the one going to give me enough logs or maybe
There will be
console
logs there.
output?
Yes, there are logs there.
Okay, then I'll take a look.
And if you could also look at the 2404, but I assume it's the same problem.
And this
Um,
runs on the latest on-ramp, whatever is
This
committed
is
in
using
the.
the latest on-ramp, yeah.
Okay, so I don't need to change anything. Just take the latest on-ramp, and I should see the failure.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's the blueprint where you turn standalone defaults so that the core gets its data from AMP or from ROC.
Oh, okay. So this is from Rock. Okay.
yes. So Ajay, if you would like, we can have a chat about this. I don't know whether that is related to some kind of like issue that I'm seeing in the CMAP, but because of the code, the error code that I get between the communication between the CMAP and the web UI, it seems like it's related to some changes that were done recently by the Canonical team. They basically start adding the HTTP codes 404 and 409. They were not there before, based on several improvements that they were doing. But it seems, at least from the CMAP perspective, you remember when I was asking you about whether the configuration update gets pushed automatically into the web UI, and
Yeah.
it didn't happen. So then I started noticing that it was this 409 error getting there. So I don't know whether this is the same or not, but we can have a quick call on this and see what exactly the issue is.
But this seems to be a basic installation, I believe. No configuration updates as such.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah,
just
Larry, I'll look at it. Yeah.
just a quick, I looked at the logs. I guess UDR is fetching some invalid state maybe because like the chain that I saw, AMF, AUSF, UDM, that's fine. But when UDM requests some data from UDR, it messes up something. So UDM is not getting correct data from UDR. So UDR might be getting incorrect data from DB or something. Just like quick update, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate any help we can get there. Anything else?
Oh yeah, I just remember one thing that I need to put in the agenda. So the other thing that we actually fix on the SD core is that when were deploying the SD core, it was almost always, the Kafka was getting restarted all the time. Then we make an update in the SD core Helm charts to have an init container for the Zookeeper, because Kafka was restarting because Zookeeper was not there available yet. The whole thing kind of like stops there. So that's something that we fix on the SD core Helm charts, and now all the time basically there's no restart for the repositories, for the pods.
Right. Anything else? All right, not hearing any. We can adjourn, and a reminder, we'll meet in 2 weeks on the 15th.
Is the meeting updates gonna get updated based on this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure what that entails. I don't want to have to do anything too hard. If we do decide to have another meeting, we can decide that on a rather dynamic basis, perhaps. So there might be something scheduled that doesn't happen. I'll talk to Michelle and we can take it offline and try to figure out the right thing to do about that.
Okay.
It should be pretty easy to just change the cadence of this meeting to every other week. And then if you want to do an additional meeting, you just add it as a one-off.
All right, if can you make that change?
Sure.
I can figure it out, but
Yeah, no problem.
okay, let's go ahead and do that. Thanks. Anything else? All right, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.